Hi, my name is Brady, and this is a walkthrough of the Querier room on Hack the Box. This is a walkthrough that I wrote on my GitHub page, which will be linked down in the description. But I wanted to go ahead and do a video walkthrough of this one because when I was kind of starting out, I was looking for more videos and I didn't like to read so much. So this is kind of just to cater to that and hopefully show things in a little bit more of a visual sense. So without too much, we'll go ahead and get into it. This is the Querier room. I've already went ahead and spun this up just for time, so we can go ahead and copy our IP address. And I'm just going to save it over here in my notes for now, so that we know that this is our IP anytime we need to come back to it. So first things first, we want to go ahead and scan this box. So I'm going to go ahead and run an nmap on the IP address, and I'm going to call this nmap.quick. And then I want to know when it's done, so I'm going to go ahead and have Sublime Text pop up with nmap.quick when it's finished. I'll go ahead and run it like that. And that actually came back pretty fast, which is nice with the quick scans. I'm also going to run a detailed scan, so we're going to do the same thing here, except I'm going to go ahead and change this to nmap.detail and do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm just going to add the SC and SV flags to run our default scripts and do some service version enumeration. We'll go ahead and run that, and that'll pop up in the background. But for now, we do know that we have some SMB ports here, and then we also have 1433, which is usually, as it says here, for the Microsoft SQL Server. While this is running, we can go ahead and open up another terminal slide here, and we can go ahead and check if we have any null sessions here. Actually, it just came back. Yep, so we can look at that in just a second, but I want to go ahead and check out SMB client, list shares on, and we'll grab our IP address again, just in case I uncopied that for some reason. And then we'll go ahead and check what we have with a null session. And while we're waiting for this to come back, we can go ahead and take a look at our nmap details. So it kind of just tells us the same thing we've seen. We do have a little bit more information about the Microsoft SQL Server. We do get our common name here of querier.hackthebox.local. And from there, we can just go ahead and pivot back to our SMB readout, because that's the only thing we really have to look at right now until we get some more information about this Microsoft SQL Server. So over here, we do have a non-standard share, this report share. So we can go ahead and dive into that a little bit. And for ease of access, I'm going to go ahead and mount it. So I'm going to make a directory here with sudo make directory, and then I'm going to call it mount/smb. And it's going to ask for my password so that I can run sudo. And I'll go ahead and mount it. So it's going to be sudo mount. I'll give me an IP address again, which luckily is still on my clipboard. And then /reports. And we're going to dump that at mount smb. It's going to ask if I want to add a password here, but I don't. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter. And that'll save it with no password. And we're just waiting for it to mount here. All right, and that just finished up. Awesome. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sudo change mode to everybody can do everything on the mount smb, just for a little ease of access here. And then we can go ahead and change directory to mount smb. And we can go ahead and list this. So what we see here is we have a currency volume report. This is an Excel macro-enabled workbook. And this is going to be a file that would be viewable on Microsoft, but it's going to be pretty difficult to interact with on Linux. But there are still a few things that we can do here, and we will be able to get some good information out of this file. So what I'm going to do here is, for ease of access, I'm just going to copy this file. So we'll copy currency, and autocomplete will give that to me. And I want to put it, I'm actually going to call it the same thing at first, just so that I get autocomplete. But I'm going to go ahead and change this so that there are no spaces, just to make the file a little bit easier to interact with. And I'm going to go ahead and just dump this in my home directory. Hopefully that'll work, and I can change directories back to my home directory. And the file is right there. Perfect. So next, to see if anything's in this file, we can go ahead and run binwalk against it. So just waiting on autocomplete here, and I got it. And binwalk identifies all of these files that are inside. So what we can do here is basically just run binwalk with the E key or the E flag to extract it here, and then do the same thing on the file name. And then this is going to output to a new directory. So we can ls again, and then we'll see the name of the directory here. So I can just go ahead and change directories to there, and then we can run ls, and it'll show us everything that's in here. I'm going to go ahead and tree this out just so that I can see all the subdirectories. And just to save some time, I know that the file that we need to interact with in this case is this vba project.bin. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to run cat vba project.bin, but we do have to specify the directory. In this case, it's in the XL, and then that'll bold to let me know that it's a valid directory, so I can go ahead and run that. And if I go ahead and move that up just a bit, we can see here at the top, because this is a bin file, if we try to cat it out, we're going to get a whole bunch of garbage up here. But we can see some things going on, like we can see this SQL string being run, but more importantly, we can see the UID equals reporting and this password string. So I'm going to go ahead and save these for later, or rather for right now, because that's when we're going to need them. But basically, I'm just going to put these in my notes for safekeeping, and then we can go ahead and try to interact with this SQL server. All right, so we don't really need this too much anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this pane, and we can just interact up here. So we're going to use the Impacket MS SQL client to interact here. We're going to specify this reporting user, and then the password as well. And just because it's got some special characters in it, I'm going to go ahead and put it in these single quotes. And then we have to specify the IP address. All right, so hopefully if all goes well, this should give us a, and it doesn't. Oh, that's because I need the Windows auth flag. Windows auth. And now we have an SQL session on the host. So we can confirm this by running like select add version, just to confirm, and we can run SQL commands on this host. So now that we're on the host itself, basically anytime I get on an MS SQL server, I basically want to run an xpcmd shell. This will give us command execution on the host itself. So we'll run xpcmd shell who am I, and here we're told the execute permission was denied on the object xpcmd shell. So basically this user, the reporting user, is not allowed to run the xpcmd shell. So we're going to have to find a way to escalate our privileges, if you will, to a different user. So I thought at first we were going to have to enumerate SQL on this one, but actually I found a blog, and that'll be linked in the walkthrough that's on GitHub if you want to check that out. But basically we can use the xp dir tree command. This xp dir tree command is used to interact with different files, and we're going to use it actually to force authentication to an SMB server that we're going to be hosting. And what that's going to allow us to do is capture a netNTLM v2 hash for the actual service that's running this MS SQL server. So we want to go ahead and do xp dir tree and then specify our remote IP address. This one is going to be 10.10.14.128, we can see, so I'll just type that in. 128. And then we're just going to call it share, I guess. And the xp dir tree takes 3 parameters, so it takes the share location, and then it's going to take how many subfolders you want to go down, and we can just do 0 because we don't really need to go down any. And then it's also going to want whether or not you want to list files, and we don't in this case. So before we run this command, I'm going to go ahead and pop another pane down here, and we're going to run impacket smb server, and we'll call it share since that's what we called it before, and we'll just share whatever the current directory is. And then I'm just going to add smb to support just because that's worked for me in the past. And we'll go ahead and start this up, and this is basically just going to create an smb share of the current directory that we're in. But basically when we authenticate to this using the xp dir tree, we're going to be able to grab that hash. So now that that's up and running, I'm going to go ahead and run this command here. And we can see that our netNTLM v2 hash comes through here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this, and we can actually cancel this. We don't need that anymore. Grab all of that, and we'll just put this in a file. And I'm going to call it sql.hash, and we'll just save that here. The next thing we're going to want to do is turn this hash into a usable password. Since this isn't an NTLM hash, we're not really able to pass it anywhere, but we can try to crack it here. So usually I would take this offline, but just because I've already run this and I know it's an easy password to crack, and just because I'm recording as well, I'm going to go ahead and just crack it on the Kali system here. So we can use hashcat, and if you run the tactec help, and then we can grep case insensitive for NTLM. This will give us the hashcat mode for NTLM2 or net NTLM v2, which is going to be 5600 in our case. So we can run hashcat mode 5600, and we're going to run that against sql.hash, and we're going to use the user share word lists rocku file to crack this against, and then we'll just tell it to force and optimize. So this is going to run for a second, and I'm going to go ahead and use magic of editing to just kind of skip to the part where this is already cracked. Okay, so through the magic of editing, hashcat has finished cracking our hash here. I'm going to scoot this up just a little bit so that we can see it. So the MS-SQL service username has cracked to this corporate 568 password. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this into our notes for safekeeping, and I'll just add the username as well, just because why not? What we're working with now, the MS-SQL corporate 568. So here we can go ahead and get rid of this session because we're not going to need it anymore. We're going to run the same Impacket MS-SQL client, but this time we're going to run it with our new credentials. So I'll get rid of that old password and throw in corporate 568. And get rid of this, and this is going to be the MS-SQL service. And here we go. All right, so now we get our MS-SQL prompt again. We can do the same, select add version to make sure that we can run commands. Okay, and now we can test again XP CMD shell just to see if we can run commands here. Okay, and instead of telling us that we are blocked, it's just saying this component is turned off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some commands from my note here, just because I want to make sure that I enter them correctly. And I'll just make a little divider there. And this is going to be the commands that we have to use to enable XP-CMD shell. So XP-CMD shell is enabled as a part of the advanced options. The first thing we're going to have to do is show the advanced options, and we just set that to a 1 as opposed to a 0. We'll go ahead and run that one. It's going to ask us to reconfigure, so we'll go ahead and reconfigure. I guess I could have just typed that, but I already got it, so whatever. And then the next thing we're going to do is spconfigure XP-CMD shell to 1. The same thing, 1 as opposed to 0, turn it on. And then we're going to reconfigure it again, and we'll run XP-CMD shell. Who am I? And you can see we do have code execution as the Querier MS-SQL service user. So this is a good first step, and we could continue from here running commands through the XP-CMD shell. But what I would prefer to do is actually catch a reverse shell here. And the method that I'm going to use to do this is I'm going to share a netcat.exe binary. And this one is already located in my opt staging directory. And if I tree this out, you can see I've got it under a Windows subdirectory, but it's just this nc.exe file. I'm just going to host this on a Python 3 HTTP server. And I'll just put that on port 80 just for ease of access. And now what we can do from here is typically, I'm going to make that a little bit smaller just so we can see this. Typically what I would do is I would just run a cert util URL cache. Now I'm typing bad because I'm recording a video. And then we'll just put our IP in here, 10.10.14.128/Windows/nc.exe. And we'll put that in users public nc.exe. And we have to prepend the XP-CMD shell since that's the way that we're running it. So what we can do is try to run this, and we get an error here. So what we get is this: a call to create process failed with error code 5. And if we just Google that real quick, it'll come up pretty quickly here. Error code 5 means access denied. So through trying some other things out, I found out that certuto is actually not allowed to be used on this box. So we can actually do the same thing, but with PowerShell. Okay, and the way that we're going to do that in this case with PowerShell is we're just going to use PowerShell C and then invoke web request to, and we can just copy and paste our address from here, including our file name. And we have to make sure we specify an out file, and that's going to be where we want this to go. So this is public nc.exe. And we'll make sure to prepend the xp-cmd shell again. And all that looks good, so I'll go ahead and paste that in and run it. And it looks like it's working on it right now. No output, but if we scroll down here, we can see that this was properly gotten. So this is going to move nc.exe over to users public nc, and we can just go ahead and run that to get our reverse shell. So I'm going to open that up in a new pane here. I'll go ahead and rl wrap my nc with lvnp, or lnvp in this case, 443. I'm just aiming for port 443 because it's usually not firewalled off. And I can go ahead and close this out. We don't need this HTTP server for the moment. Going to run, in this case, it's going to be the same XP CMD shell, but all we have to do is call this here. So the C users public and c.exe. We want to tell that to execute cmd.exe, and we want to send a shell to 10, 10, 14, 128 at port 443. So we'll go ahead and paste this in and run it. And we can see it's hanging, which is usually a good sign on our end. And we'll go ahead and move over here, and we see that we do have a prompt here. We can run who am I and see that we are the Querier MS SQL service user. So I'm just going to call this staging for now. We'll use it to stage files later. I'm going to start this Python server back up because I'll need it later in the video. But we can also, if our shell dies, we can launch another one from here. So this is just our general staging area. But back here on our shell, there are basically 3 methods of privilege escalation that I found. And I'm going to list them in the same order that I have them in the write-up. So if you're following the write-up on the GitHub, you'll be able to follow that along in this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move into C users public, since that's where I'm going to be dumping files for now. I'm not too worried about writing to disk, so that's all good. We don't have to use xp-cmd shell anymore. We can use the same syntax over here. So I'm just going to move down this PowerShell C, invoke web request. And in this case, I still want Windows, but in this case, I'm going to move over Power View. Sorry, not Power View. It's going to be powerup.ps1. And over here, we're going to do powerup.ps1, same thing. And we'll go ahead and run that. And this is thinking about it over here. It looks like it finished successfully. And if we come back over to staging, we can confirm that this ran. And we can also confirm this with a directory listing, show powerup.ps1 and the netcat binary that we transferred over earlier. So here I'm going to jump into PowerShell with an execution policy bypass, just so we can run our scripts with no problems. I'm going to load up that powerup.ps1 file. And then the powerup.ps1 commandlet that we're going to use is the invoke all checks. All checks, there we go, commandlet. And this is going to take just a second to run. We already got something back, but it's going to take just a second, so I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead with the editing again. All right, and through the magic of editing, we are back to the end of our PowerUp PS1 output. So we've ran invoke all checks, and now we are looking at kind of a wide array of some output here. So going from the bottom up, you can see a plain text password here. We're going to pretend that we don't see that. That's going to be the second thing that we look at here. And we'll keep on moving up here. And we can see this USO service is modifiable. And we can see this bin path here. We're going to alter this bin path. It's going to be our first method of escalation. So we can drop back down into a cmd.exe. And we'll just, so what we can do here is we can exploit this USO service. We can set a new bin path to whatever we like. And we actually have an abuse function here that PowerUp gives us. We're not going to use it in this case, just because we can get a little bit more manual with this one. This one, I think, just adds a new administrator user for you. But we're just going to go ahead and send ourselves a shell as the administrator already. So what we're going to do here is we will do sc config. We'll specify the USO service. and we're going to edit it and say bin path equals, and then we're going to call our C users public and c.exe, and then we'll tell it to execute another cmd.exe and send it to 10, 10, 14, 128 on port. We'll use 443 again, and just to confirm, I'll just rl wrap another nc lnvp 443, and it doesn't look like there are any issues there, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and it says service config success. So we should be good there. We can go ahead and net stop that USO service just to make sure if it's already running. Yep, it's stopping. And then we're just going to do the same thing again, but we'll just turn this into a net, start, and we should get a shell down here. And we did, we saw the shell pop, and we can just run who am I? And we are the system user. So that was the bin path method of escalation. We can go ahead and move on to the second one here. So I'll go ahead and close out the shell. We're not going to need it anymore. We're just going to re-exploit via a different method. So here, if we go back up to our power up output, we can see this this password here. Now, power up has done us the courtesy of going ahead and decrypting this for us. But this is actually a C password string that was found in this group policy object, or this groups.xml file. So what we can do is we can actually grab this file here, and we can read it. And I think the way that I showed in the walkthrough is just manually searching for that file, but since we already have it here in PowerUp, I'm just going to kind of take the easy route for the sake of the video. Only thing I have to do here is get rid of some of this formatting stuff, and then I'll wrap this in quotes because it does have the space here that Windows isn't going to like. And I'll tell Windows to type out this file. We're going to read this groups.xml file that contains the C password string. And we can see our output here, name administrator, and we have the C password string down here. Now this is encrypted, but it's an easily reversible decryption. And all we have to do here is use the GPP decrypt, and then dump that password here. It'll give us the same thing. My uncles are Mario and Luigi. Bang, bang, one bang. So we can confirm, since this is the administrator user, we can assume that psexec will work. So I'm going to run impacket psexec, run administrator, and specify that password here. Since it does have the exclamation points in it, it's going to break everything if I don't put it in the single quotes. And then @ and our lhost. And this should give us an administrative shell as well. Okay, and through the magic of editing, we actually got the shell a little bit faster. It does seem to lag on my end for some reason, so I just went ahead and cut here. But yeah, we can see that we can run who am I, and we are the system user once again. So I'll go ahead and close out of this one again and shut this out, and we'll go ahead and run the final method. So our output's a little bit high up, but we can just run who am I priv. And from here, we can see that our MS SQL service user has the SE impersonate privilege. And this is usually a good indicator that a potato attack will work. So what we can do is we can run another PowerShell command. And I'm actually hosting an exploit for this in my staging directory here. So if we go back up to my tree command, you can see I have a potato directory. The one that's worked for me most often, both in general and in the case of this lab, has been the godpotato net4.exe. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my PowerShell command, pull down that as a file, get rid of PowerUp, and this actually is in the window directory. I have it in a potato directory, and then we're just going to call this, I usually use god4.exe just to show that it's the godpotato net4 exploit. So we'll go ahead and run that command. Here we go. Run this, take a second, we can confirm that it came through on our staging, godpotato net4. And now if we run there, we can see god4.exe. So the way that the godpotato exploit works is it actually has you specify a command to run as the administrative user. But since we've already moved netcat over, we can just use it to send yet another reverse shell. So I'll run god4.exe, and it wants me to specify cmd. I'll just do C users public and c.exe, execute cmd.exe back to 10, 10, 14, 128. And we're going to send that on port 443. And once again, I'm just going to confirm that that port is all good. So our I will rl wrap and see lnvp 443, and doesn't look like there are any issues. So I'll go ahead and send this. And we caught a shell here, and we can run who am I, and we are the system user. So at this point, we can go ahead and grab all the flags and everything. For the purpose of this video, I don't really see that. But yeah, hopefully this video helps clear things up if any of the write-up stuff was unclear. If there is any confusion or anything over anything in this write-up, you can just hit me with a comment or something, and I'll try my best to get back to it. But other than that, hope to do a couple more of these later, and I will see you next time.